All right, this is Marty Wilson speaking. I'm sitting at the Monroe County Historical Association with Mr. Tom Held. It's February 25th, 2026, and we're sitting in their new library, and Tanya's here, and a friend named Joel is sitting in the room with us as well. All right, so Tom, we're here to talk about Jonas, Pennsylvania. You have a unique attraction to Jonas. Why don't we start with this? Where and when were you born, and who were your parents?
I was born in Allentown, 1947, and we lived in Trexlertown area. And my parents were Paul and Lucille. She was a winner, Held. So my dad started out in the car business, which he was eventually his whole life. But he had a diversion, and he came up and bought a hotel here in the Poconos. And he bought the hotel in 1950. I was 3 years old. We came up, and I was lucky he took a lot of pictures, and I guess I do that too. So when they had settlement at the hotel, he took pictures of the settlement, the hotel, and everything, what it looked like. So they sell this Hudson dealership in Trexlertown, and comes up here. And I never understood what made my dad do that.
I was going to ask you why.
We still wonder. But I think it was, my grandparents were in the hotel business in Lehigh County called Leather Corner Post Hotel. It was known locally recently a place for bombas, those old handmade bombami things. Mm-hmm. But before that, she was a well-known cook. So my grandparents had a farm, and they rented this hotel for the business because she was a good cook, my grandmother and my mother. So they were there for 10 years, so my mother had that as a background. My dad was next to it, had a garage, so he was in the car business. So they came up there, and my dad says to my mother, "Don't you worry about working. We're going to hire somebody. You just be the hostess, and we'll hire other people to do the work." Biggest lie. So right after they bought the hotel, I have a letter, matter of fact, in my truck, that my dad had this pre-planned trip to Mexico with his Masonic group or whoever it was, I forget. So now she's in this hotel with no electric, a basement that has ground, just dirt, and snakes that were used to control the rats. And an old man named Charlie Snyder, who was the last remaining Snyder living there. And she's all upset now. This letter, they saved his letter, it's great. And she says, "Paul, I am scared. There's no electric here at night. People coming to the door, knocking on the door, asking for you. This one guy came in, Mr. Steckel, with a bottle of bourbon, and we had to have a drink, and then he left. That was fine. But every time I hear a noise, and by the way, if you can sell this godforsaken place to one of your buddies, sell it." She says, "All I want to do is go back to Allentown and go shopping."
Why was there no electricity in 1950?
Well, there was electric. But what you had to do to have the electric in the hotel, you had to go over to the pond, release the water. It went underground into the grist mill. It turned a turbine wheel, got going, and then it had a bunch of spider gears that went two directions. Went down to the sawmill on top of the creek and turned a sawmill. It went back up underground over top of the pond, under the road, into the basement of the hotel, and turned an electric generator for electric. And if you were in a bar room talking to people who sat in that bar with that, the lights would hang there, and you would hear this thump, thump, thump in the basement, and the lights would just go boom, boom, with the turn of the drive shafts. And luckily I have pictures of just about all of this stuff. And the drive shafts were like every 8 feet above the water in the pond. There was a pedestal, drive shaft, U-joint, drive, and went under the road, trapdoor in the road to lubricate it into the basement. They were very ingenious. And the hotel had water, but there were no water pumps nor a well. If you followed the creek up the mountain, at just a little bit higher elevation, they made a dam, a reservoir. They dug a trench, a 6-inch cast iron pipe, came down and went into the side of the hotel, and due to the fact that the reservoir was a higher elevation, it was all gravity. And living there as a 13-year-old, lived there until I was 3 to 13. I never knew this stuff. Water's water, you know. And that dining room, when you were in there and having one of the good food, you said, "Can I have a glass of water, please?" It was no different as if I ran down to the creek. There you are. There was no filtration. It was just a reservoir with crystal clear water, came out of the side of the mountain, and like about 3 big springs. And then the state found out about it, and they said, "You can't do that, you know, you have to test it and all that." So it was 1985, and they put a well in for the hotel, you know. But there was a bar room, the water ran continuously. There was a horse trough outside in the front, water ran continuously because it was coming in from the creek, you know.
Are you saying it came out of a faucet and would go into a drain 24 hours a day?
Mm-hmm. In the bar room, it would just flow. Behind the bar was a thing for water. It just ran continuously because the water came, there was no water pump. It was just water that came in that pipeline from the creek, from the reservoir upstream. And then there's a horse trough out front, same thing, the water ran continuously. And people would bring the horse trough, or horses obviously, but I used it for tadpoles and everything else.
This is a hotel. People are paying money to sleep there, right?
This was a very, very popular hotel from 1900 up to when Mr. Jonas Snyder, that's how it became Jonas. It was called, when Jonas Snyder purchased it in 1859, he bought 2 tracts of land, 460 acres it was originally. And Jonas Snyder died in 1906. It became a post office in 1899, and it was called Sterner's then. Prior to Sterner's in the 1850s, it was called New Mechanicsville. If you look at the old maps, it's called New Mechanicsville Hotel. Then it became Sterner's, I think from Jacob Sterner. The post office found out there were 2 Sterners in Pennsylvania and said, "You have to change the name." Just so happened that Jonas had died in October of 1906. So they said, "Well, we have to submit some names to the post office. Put down Jonas." And then it became Jonas from 1906 on. It was a post office from 1899 to 1956. When we purchased the hotel, the post office moved to the house next door, which Ralph Snyder lived. Ralph Snyder was the grandson of Jonas Snyder. Jonas Snyder, John Snyder, Ralph Snyder. Jonas Snyder had 6 children. Then John Snyder had 10. It was a farm and a hotel. He had 5 girls first, and then they had 5 boys, so which they needed for the farm. So it was a working farm, a resort hotel, drawing people from New York, Philadelphia. And I know all this because all the letters were saved. Just if you can imagine, every piece of paper that came across that at the post office came to them personally, business-wise, whatever. They kept it. He was an implement dealer. He was an insurance agent. They sold pianos, organs, cream separators. He formed his own insurance company. He was the bank director here in Stroudsburg. Jonas Snyder helped build the courthouse up here, the original one, the old one. If you go in the old courthouse in the front entrance, there's a plaque up there. It lists 3 commissioners. Jonas Snyder is one of them. And all those are Jerome France, and I forget the other one. But he was a commissioner, very involved in the politics. If you look at pictures of what the original hotel looked like before Jonas, it was called like just a little shack, a stagecoach stop. You see pictures of Jonas Snyder just sitting out there like a little, you know, bib overalls and a cap, and looked like anybody else at that time. But he was held in high esteem by the political Democrat Party here in Stroudsburg, in that judges, lawyers would always come to him for votes. If they're running for re-election, they would send letters to him, get your men, invite everybody in the neighborhood, you know, we'll pay the bill, just tell them to vote for Judge LaBar or Shook, whatever the names were back then. And even money, he would loan money to people. And it was all held by a simple piece of paper, and he kept all that stuff. Simple, Jacob Surface, do hereby promise to pay Mr. Wilson $24. And if he didn't, he foreclosed on him. He had sale, and they went liens on it, it was all, they just kept every little piece of paper. So, a lot of judges we have letters from the local people here who started out as lawyers, became judges, and then ran for political office and made it to Washington, D.C., who was Attorney General, from here. And all those letters they kept. Some of them I gave to Monroe County years ago already, and they're just original letters with Washington letterhead on them and things. One letter said, this Judge Schul says, I need a pig for a barbecue. Do you have any pigs I can pick up? And it's handwritten, So, where else did we go there? It was Sterner's. I got sidetracked. Where do we go from here?
Well, how about this? There might be one or two people that are not sure where Jonas is. Could you just orient us?
It's the western Poconos. Let's see. Kresgeville, known before. It's right up north of Kresgeville off of 209. And you go on top of the mountain, you have Hickory Run State Park, the racetrack up there, Pocono. It's at the base of the mountain, the Pocono Plateau. So it's at the bottom. Daughters Corner, Kresgeville, Effort, Broadettsville are all in that same area. So if you're coming in 209 off of the turnpike, like the Heighton area, going towards Stroudsburg, when you go through Kresgeville, sign says 534 north, sign says, as soon as you turn left, it says 534 north, 5 miles. You go about a quarter mile, it says Jonas, straight ahead, 6 miles. Oh wait, you just went less than. But it's right at the base of the mountain. As you're approaching it, you see this mountain ridge. Right at the base, that's Jonas Hotel. It's a nice building, built in 1901.
And it's still there.
Still there. It is now called Valor. It's Valor Foundation. The hotel had gone bankrupt by one of the last owners, and the bank couldn't get their money out of it, and they sold it to the Valor Clinic. And the whole idea was home for homeless vets, that they would set up.
Yes.
The bar room could say had 13 bar stools, and now has 13 computers, and they take donations. So it's over the years now, it's probably been 10 plus years, I'm guessing. They do take donations, food, clothing, and they do help vets. But I think the primary, they work in relation to Camp Trexler too. They use their freezers for a food bank over there. So when they had the grand opening of Valor, I've never seen more people on the grounds of that hotel ever. Every square foot there was a person standing there. State representatives, people donating. Broadettsville Women's Quilt Association made quilts, for the rooms and things. Dog kennels outside for vets who were living out in the woods, who had dogs who wouldn't come in. They bring them in, and the people there are vets, but it's all privately funded. There's no government. Mark Bayless, the head of it, and they make the men work, make them do work on the grounds and things like that. So.
Well, let's get back to 1950. You're 3 years old moving into this hotel, and what I was thinking is, you have this cold water coming down from the stream.
Mm-hmm.
Was there hot water for guests to use? Was there some way to how they heat the water?
Yeah, we had coal. It was heated. We heated. It was all radiators. Matter of fact, one of the bills that they've saved was the bill to install central heating, and it was all radiators with a coal furnace in the basement. So imagine this is 13 rooms, pretty large hotel, 3 stories, and radiators and pipes. The bill to install that in 1905 was no more than $700.
So central heat as of 1905.
Central heat, yeah. Before that was wood stoves heating. Yeah. If you look at pictures of the hotel around 1900, the roof had 2 chimneys, and that was because they had stoves all over the place, basement and different rooms.
What did people come there to do? I mean,
known for their spring chicken dinners, just to come there, and they loved the air, the Poconos, the Snyders evidently must have been great innkeepers, because people writing letters were just very positive. And these were letters from New York, Wall Street, all over. Just reserving rooms, saying, I don't want summer to go by without visiting beautiful Jonas. It was a resort hotel, and they would say in there, I'm going to be up by machine, by car.
How'd they get there?
By
Car.
machine.
Was
By
there,
car.
Was before cars? Was it rail service?
Well, they would pick people up at train stations if they came up by train, I think in Palmerton.
Okay.
So even freight would come up to them they pick things up by horse and buggy. But they had a public sale. It was in the paper, I think when Jonas died, 1906. And somewhere somebody told me they never seen more equipment, buggies and things all over the fields, the grounds, just to reduce inventory when Jonas died in 1906. But it must have been, if you could go back in time and walk in that bar room and just walk in that original small bar, we have pictures of what it looked like. The smell between cigar smoke and chewing tobacco. But just to go back in time and reading these letters that I have, the mail, just gave you a sense of what it really was like. When you read a letter by somebody just wrote in handwritten their own letter, it's almost like you have a millisecond, you went back in time, what it was like. But I lived there, and I have sort of an advantage to it because I was in the same rooms and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was when you walked in the layout, the first floor, you had a small bar room on the left, and then you had a little room which was called a music room, which was filled with organs and pianos because they sold them. And then the next room was like a waiting room, really chairs and things. And the next room up, accessed by a side porch, was the dining room. And people would write letters saying, I'm going to be up for your famous chicken dinners. So they had a courtyard right outside the hotel of pine trees and things and lattice to hold chickens in there. The big chicken coop there, a building. I mean, pretty large. So
Was the resort open all year round or just in the summer?
the hotel was open year round, but obviously with coming by car, by machine like they had back then, it was probably just for summer months. But hunting was very popular, very popular. People would come up from Philadelphia. There was one man, Mr. Muir, he would come up from Philly. He was a veterinarian or meat inspector, I think, for the city, and he would come up there, and he was always get his picture and photographs with his game and stuff, and with a bear and whatever. There's pictures of the front of the hotel lined up with small game. The hotel's front porch is pretty much like 3 times the length of this room, lined with a big long rope. Every square inch was an animal was hanging. Pheasant, rabbit, and I gave these pictures, had them enlarged them to my friends I grew up with. And I go, what'd you think of that picture? There was 42 grouse, 15 rabbits. They counted them. But it was known for hunting, fishing with the Jonas Creek there. The pond, they would put fish in. They would just come up there for rest and relaxation and their food. And they had 13 rooms to stay in. People would reserve a room, and in the letter they would say, give me a room 7 like I had last time, and put a bottle of AJ in the room for us, Applejack. Jonas Hotel was one of the largest vineyards in Monroe County at that time. When we bought the hotel, in the basement were large wine casks. I still had wine in them. They had peach brandy in them. So when we sold the hotel, and 10 years later, my mother and parents took along this peach brandy, and they had in decanters, crystal clear peach brandy. The smell of, peach. We used it at Christmas time and special occasions for years, and it never lost its flavor. They made Applejack, they made wine, they had a whole grape arbor in the back. They had vines growing on the fence rows. They sold apples to cities. They shipped apples. As you approached the hotel from Kresgeville and then the road going towards Merwinsburg, It was lined with apple trees, mature apple trees. They were there until 57 when the state came and enlarged the road and they took them. But in spring, if you can imagine, these large mature apple trees form like a canopy of apple blossoms in spring. I mean, I remember riding down there on my bike and smelling that smell. And then I went away to summer camp and I come back, trees are gone. There was a barn gone. The state just straightened everything out, you know. But there were a lot of buildings there, and I have legends built that show what was there at one time. Saw ice houses, smoke houses, barns, chickens, several barns, bank barn. Amazing.
Where did the family live? I mean, did you have your own apartment in the
We
building,
lived
or did
in
you
a-
have a separate house?
We lived in the hotel. I remember the room numbers specifically. Room 1 and 2 were my grandparents. Room 3 was my great-grandmother. Room 4 was my aunt. 6 and 7 were 6 was my parents. I think I had my room changed all the time. Mine was 7. That was it.
There were 13 rooms, you told me?
13
And
rooms.
7 of them were taken up
But
by
we were
family?
more the hotel was built in 2 stages. If you look at the original hotel, and then they added on a kitchen and part above it. We lived in that part over here, but the main part of the hotel didn't have, the whole place had 13, but the main rooms went to 2nd and 3rd floor. They weren't occupied 100% all the time, but more so hunting seasons. My grandparents, my grandmother, the men would come up the night before hunting, and I would watch these guys come in carrying their red and black Woolrich jackets. That smell as a kid, that gun smell, it was so attractive, you know, just these guys carrying these leather things, the long boots, you know, this is in the 50s. And they go up to their rooms, you know. Early morning, my grandmother would make them lunches. She would put sandwiches, sticky buns in bags for them. Part of the deal, you know. And that's, I think most of the people came there for that, or the summertime for holidays, you know. But you see so many pictures were kept there, showing the scenes, the people around, you know, like that. When I got this old mail, when I was starting to open it, I didn't have pictures. I just had 15 boxes of letters. I didn't know what it was. All of a sudden, I was educated as for what went on there. This mail was never opened by my family until the middle 80s, because we didn't know what was in there. And then Joel and I, we went to the cottage, and we got a cottage up there behind the hotel, and we started opening it up. What is this? It was letters, bills. All of a sudden, this history of the hotel came to life. One pile of letters, which was unusual, all wrapped up in twine, addressed to a Benjamin Roth, RD4, Allentown. Here, one of the daughters, Emma, was courting a man in Allentown named Benjamin Roth. And these were letters to him. And she never did marry him, but she would always sign it, love and kisses, your friend Emma. You know, and then he would, well, we didn't have his letters to her, but I always, why were they back at the hotel? Well, she never married him. Probably the proper thing to do then was that you didn't marry the person, you returned these letters. I don't know how they got back there, but they were in amongst the hotels. These were neat letters. As a matter of fact, the man who I grew up with across the street, Ralph, the farmer who purchased all of the land from the family when we bought the hotel, it announced his birth in one of the letters. He was the youngest boy. She was like the second oldest. And then there it says, oh, by the way, Mama had a pretty baby boy last night. They named him Ralph. And it's dated January 11th, 1911.
So these are letters that were written to people staying at the hotel.
Yeah, this was family letters, you know. But most of the letters came from people like reserving rooms, like a business, a hotel or a motel.
Okay.
And others were just business letters, invoices, because it was a business. Yeah. They sold slate, they sold farm implements. It was a full operating farm. It was a sawmill. It was, they sold, like I said, they had 460 acres of woodland to harvest trees.
And when your dad bought it in 1950, he got all that land?
We got 60. Ralph across the street, of the family member, bought 400. And some of that land got into Camp Trexler too, which became Camp Trexler later on. But we got 60, which was a lot of land, and it included barns, a pig barn, the hotel, a pond, a grist mill that was there, a sawmill. My playhouse as a kid was a grist mill. There was this grist mill, and in the basement was a blacksmith shop. It looked just like the men went out to Chick-fil-A for a sandwich. You know, it was all the tools there, and they just like walked out. It was just everything just there. And that was in the one end of the building. Then upstairs was the millstones for the grist mill, and all these pulleys and belts that were, you know, went around to turn the stones. You know, they made barrels on one side, but it was the whole town, the whole community was a self-contained community. And when I talked to people during the Depression, they never knew there was a depression going on. They never. It was always, they had their own food. They had, people still would come there for, you know, they had money. The girls were there working. You had family helping you. John Snyder, who ran the business. Jonas died back in 1906. His son was John. He had the children. John was the businessman. John was into everything. When John died in 1948, I was told he had over 100,000 in the bank, which I believe it, and that was divided up between 10 children. But he was he must have got it from Jonas, and whoever Jonas got it from, they were very astute with money, you know, lendings and making money. So he was a bank director here in Stroudsburg. Stroudsburg Trust, is it? Stroudsburg Bank, that was on Main Street. Mm-hmm. So it was a very prominent family, and that would have been all lost if this mail would have been thrown out or never kept originally. They kept wills. Any document was there. When Jonas Snyder died, his will was there. For example, he left in there a dowry, which they did back then, that his wife would get 1 cow, 1 pig, you know, stuff like that.
And you still have all these papers.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like something that maybe MCHA would be interested in.
I'm interested in giving them here because it's
Can we
driving
back
me
up-
nuts.
I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead. Can we back up for a second? I think before we turned the machine on the recorder, you told me the story about your dad selling his car business, and you told me $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then did you say he paid $400,000?
100, same price.
Oh, same price.
Yeah.
100,000.
For 60 acres.
Okay.
So we were in it for. You haven't been recording this.
Was that?
You weren't recording this?
No, we're recording.
Oh.
Yeah. No, but before we turned it on, before Tanya came in, you were telling me some stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Then the 100,000. He was a Hudson dealer, so he got white. He was always a car guy, and then once he was up here now in Jonas. He was there for only, let's see, he bought it in 1950. In 1955, he goes to East Stroudsburg over here, and right on the edge of the river, when you go over the bridge on the left, it's a business still there, the building is. He bought a Hudson dealership from Mr. Howell, H-O-W-E. So about a year later, there was a big flood came through here in 56 and wiped him out right on the edge of the river. So we still have the hotel over there, doing well. And then he goes back into Buick dealership in Kutztown. And he was there for a year and a half, a partnership, and didn't like it. He got out. Then he bought a place which I was in the car business. We had a Chrysler Plymouth dealership in Kutztown, and he bought that. And but he had to get out of it in 1960 because he had too many irons in the fire. So we had our guy, a man named Leonard Stauffer, came in and wanted to buy it. And then he had no money. And he knew a friend who had bought a gas station, and he says, let me ask you, he said, when you bought this place, how much money did you have? He said, I didn't have anything. And then he goes, that's it, going up and buy Jonas. So he goes to my dad, wanted to get out, so creative financing, says, can you come up with some down money? Leonard came up with some down money. And my dad held the paper until he established a line of credit and a business, you know, then he could borrow the money and pay my dad off. So in the meantime, he still had the car dealership in Kutztown. So Lenny bought Dad gave to them or deeded to them the land in the back where he developed along the creek, and he put homes in there. So he had a business, established a line of credit. Then he went into the concrete business, which they've been in. His son has it today, Buster.
So your dad was only in the resort business for 10 years?
The hotel business.
Yeah, 1950 to 1960.
Yeah, he was in the
And then he was in automobiles
55,
beforehand and automobiles.
and then in 57 we went back in. So the family was in. My mother, you could say, was in the hotel business from 50 to 60. My dad was in the car business.
Gotcha.
It'd be like, car business, come here. Car business.
I
I
got
mean, he'd work till 9 o'clock at night, and then like Kutztown for 3 years, he close up at 9, and drive for an hour, and up at Jonas at 10. And then turn around and be back before anybody else was in the morning.
So it sounds like he told your mom she wouldn't have to work, but it sounds like it fell on your mom's shoulders, right?
Yeah, they had a very good business. In the evenings or Saturdays, that place was lined up with cars. It was just people coming up, and they had a lot of friends from the Lehigh Valley. Leather corner posts. My dad was he was in business, so he knew people. When I would drive around with my dad in the valley, I'd be like 13 or 14 or 15. Driving beep beep, beep beep. Dad, how do you know all these people? He said, well, I've been in business and I know people. Years later, I'm in business. I took the dealership over. My son's with me and doing the same thing. Dad, you know a lot of people. I was in business.
So what do you remember about being there? I mean, you were 3 years old. You probably don't remember much those first years, right?
I remember a lot. Well, not the first years, but my father remembers going to school for the first time. My aunt lived with me also, my mother's sister. Judy was like about 7 years older than me. So she took down in Kresgeville, the Polk Township, the original old school still there. I remember her taking my hand, walking in, going to school for the first time, and turning right and saying, that's grade number 1, and I got in the door and she kicked me. No.
She kicked you?
No, I made that up. But you had the cursives, riding above there.
How'd you get to school in the morning?
School bus.
Okay.
School bus was driven by a mechanic at the gas station in Kresgeville. So he would be working on cars with his mechanic's bib overall type thing, greasy, dirty. Hey, time to pick the kids up, get in the bus and drive over and pick us up. And most of it was dirt road all around there. So he picked us up and took us down. So that was, for 10 years, that was a school bus. When we sold the hotel in 1960, that's when the new schools merged. Pleasant Valley School District just built that new school. And then we moved back down to Lehigh Valley, then I went to Parkland. So I went from a little school up here, which I liked. I liked the people up here. I liked living up here. As far as I was concerned, I was a person from the Poconos. And I went back to where our family's from. So I went to Parkland, brand new school, big, swimming pool. I didn't like it. Classes were big and did not do well.
Well, you were 13 when your dad sold the place.
Yes.
Did you might have been too young, but did you work around? I mean, did you help out? Did you have chores?
Wash dishes sometimes.
Wash dishes?
Yeah. And no, what I did was there was a bell outside that was from the original old hotel. Big bell, this big. It was on the side of the hotel on top of 2 telephone poles. And they would use that to call me in. It was child abuse. My parents didn't know where I was. I would go out in the morning. I was like a kid in the 50s. I had this most beautiful land that was ours. A creek, groves, a pond, fishing, trapping. I had barns, a farmer with a tractor. I'd be riding hay wagons, riding in him harvesting corn, riding in the back of this Oliver tractor. It's great. Years later, I was sitting at the bar, and this was in probably the 90s, and I heard a girl sitting next to me, I didn't know who she was, talking about her experiences living here in the hotel. She was telling the exact same stories I did. And I said, who are you? And here she lived, like the 2 owners after us, lived there for 10 years too. But it's funny, she said I would go across with Ralph, the hay wagon, the cows, the orchards. It was a neat place to grow up. All around us for 10 miles either direction was woods. It was just, if a car, like a friend down the street, for example, if a car went by the house, they ran to the window to see who it was. They heard a car coming. Oh my God, there's a car. And so sometimes we didn't even have to get up. We could tell who it was by the sound. But it was all dirt road. And my dad gave me a go-kart for a birthday gift one time in the 50s, late 50s. Oh boy, this was a license to kill. I had a go-kart. I could drive way on top of the mountain, this way just forever. And there were hardly any cars on the road. And it was fun. The whole idea of growing up there in the 50s, I had a friend down the street, Bobby Getz. We'd hang out, we'd do things, we'd fish, trapped, and I know them today yet. All the families up there I still know.
And then you left when you were 13.
Yeah.
You left paradise behind.
Yeah. Well, I have two families. I have families in the Lehigh Valley and I have families up here. And I see them both. I come up here to Jonas at least every 2 weeks in the wintertime. We have a cabin behind the hotel that used to be part of the picnic grove. When the hotel was there, this big area was called Snyder's Grove. And that's where they held church picnics. I had a pavilion in there. An outhouse right next to the creek. But people would write letters too about saying, save us, can we come up and spend night and put a tent up in the grove? There's a little bridge going across the creek and you can go in there and camp in there. But there was a pavilion there, just a nice building where they served beer and soda. They had like a church picnic. Bands would play there, Slatington Band, Palmerton would be there. It was a nice setting.
So you move away when you're 13 years old, and here you are reconnected with it. So can you just summarize briefly
Because of the mail got me back into what was there. If I wouldn't have had this Jonas mail that was kept and given to...
So your family kept the mail?
My dad took it along. When we sold the hotel, all these boxes were in this one building. And I remember them as a kid because I just remember seeing it there, not knowing what it was. Comes along, 1960, we sell it. Time to move up the moving van. Dad takes it along. I didn't know anything of it. I was 14. Go ahead in time, my mother built a house near me in Allentown. And she finally goes, I'm tired of cleaning around this stuff. Do you want these boxes from Jonas? Okay, I'll take it. So I have it in my house, and years went by and I didn't go through it. Finally, I have a wood stove down there. One winter, it's warm. I started opening it up. I go, holy mackerel! This is history, detailed history of what went on there. And more I went into it. I started asking questions. I'd fill out a notepad. I would come up to the grove where we would camp every summer in the woods. We never went on vacation. We just camped with our son growing up next to the creek. And then I would go down to Ralph Snyder, the grandson. And I say, Ralph, what about this? Who's this? Ask him questions. Now it's coming together a little bit, but I still don't have pictures. And Ralph goes in the house one time and he goes, and he said in Dutch, no, Baltimore. Wait a minute, I'll be right back. And he comes out with 2 shoe boxes of pictures. Here it is. It's now all come together. So I had a 35 millimeter camera with me, and I'm thinking, this is the last time I'm going to see these pictures, and I'm trying to get all these in like 10 pictures, with film. And as years went on, Ralph had passed away, and Mary passed away, and they have one daughter, Linda. She's still living there. She finally said, take these pictures along. So I take them along and copy them all, and I have those in binders with the Jonas mail. And Linda has the original pictures. But, oh yeah, it's the bell that was there. I asked Ralph, and he was, one summer day, his sister was still alive, Beulah. She was sitting under a tree, she had a blanket, she was blind, but she was smart. Just sitting there, and I said, Ralph, what was the bell used for? Ralph said, that was used for ringing. Ralph was a Pennsylvania Dutch farmer. Enough said. And she said, ach, schwätz nicht so dumm. Don't talk so dumb. She said, that was used to call workers in the field, forest fires. They were fire warden. whatever is needed, communication, Speaking of communication, they had a telephone there, big crank phone in the hallway. Back then, if you wanted a phone, if you owned, your land was a mile up the road, that mile up the road, you put the telephone poles in. The owner of the land put the telephone poles in, or the wires, you buy them and put them in, which I never knew. So I have the bills that they got, all the stuff.
So it sounds like you had an idyllic childhood, and then you still must, throughout your life, you must have thought a lot about the Jonas Hotel. I mean, you must have kept it in your consciousness, and then when you got a chance to look at these letters,
Yep.
kind of all came along for you.
Yeah. And now I have all this stuff, and I still go through it. I must have put the good stuff, you could say, in 20, 30, 3-ring binders, and acid-free envelopes and things just in there. Joel and I think we did the original boxes and opening them up, taking twine off of them, and then separating them and say, good, mediocre, wow, stuff,
Did you ever, later in life, when you were a teenager or a young man, go back to the hotel just to visit it?
Oh, we have a cabin right there. Right behind it, I built a cabin in the woods, right behind it. And when we built it, I went back a lot to stay in rooms and things. And matter of fact, I wanted my son to experience it too. And one time we had gotten permission to go deer hunting in the land up behind it. So we stayed at the hotel that night. And one thing I didn't realize, this was before smoking was sort of outlawed. In the room upstairs, like 3 a.m, by the time that smoke in the bar room permeated through the ceiling. It was just like, I'm laying in bed sleeping, like somebody came up to me and went, I was wakened by the smoke coming up through. But I just wanted him to experience the hotel. The hard part when we sold the hotel and moved to Bridningsville was the quietness. I couldn't get used to the quiet. I was used to barroom noise, people talking, jukebox, and my mother cooking smaller portions. Mom, what are we going to do with 5 gallons of mashed potatoes? But it was very, and after we sold it, there was like 4 or 5 owners. Some of them started to remodel and add on, and what they would do, like the original doors or gingerbread brackets or anything architecturally pleasing, they would have a scrap pile behind the hotel, and I was always there going through it. And they know I was doing that. Some of them gave me some really nice stuff that I have. As a matter of fact, I have a sign that Ralph gave me, Ralph Snyder, that says Snyder's Grove on it, that hung on the front of this pavilion, announcing the entrance to the park behind the hotel. This was a sign that's probably this wide, twice the length of this table, and in script, in the script of writing, Jonas Grove. And he gave it to me when he was having a public sale of selling his so-called junk, which I bought just about everything. And he comes over to me, he says, in the bar, he says, look, that back there. I said, take that. He says, that's yours. I mean, we have that. That's really folk art.
Where do you live now, Tom?
I live in Allentown, near Dorney Park,
Okay.
West Coastville, near Lehigh Valley Hospital.
Well, you've had I don't know what happened after you left Jonas, but it sounded like you had a great childhood growing up in that place.
I did. And I went back in camping. My son experienced the camping in the area like I did.
You mentioned your mom cooking all that food and all the noise and everything. Did you hang out with the guests? Did you get to know the guests? Did they get to know you?
Yeah, some were regulars. Some would come there all the time, the same people from different parts, like 4th of July, Labor Day, yeah. And they were always called my uncle. This is Aunt Kitty, my Uncle Kitty. I mean, they were just friends, and they were referred to as uncle and aunt. Yeah, and we have some good pictures. My dad, when Polaroid cameras were invented, he bought one. So you can imagine the bar room scene. We got really good pictures of the people at the bar, our friends, local people. And then across the street one day, my dad also had a movie camera. We have movies of this. Everybody who these people I was talking about, decided to go across the street in chairs on a sunny day and sit in the grass. You know, you could see the hotel in the background. And they just sat there in these old lawn chairs and just, you know, having drinks and stuff. It was that was a 1950s photo. I was talking to a boy, Gary Holtzman, and he said, my dad took pictures, Eddie Holtzman. And he says, I have them, and I don't know who these people are. And there's a picture of a boy on a bicycle. Wait a minute. Let me see those. Here he has pictures of the ones we have video of, the movies. So I got them and I made copies of them. It's that same scene that we have videos of, which shows the people sitting around in their chairs. So, yeah, it was
I thought you were going to say that was you on the bicycle.
It was.
Oh, it was you on the bicycle.
I have a picture of me and I totally forgot about this bicycle. And there I have this bike, and the more I look at it, the more and more it's coming back of what I used to look at the bike and go, God, if I could just put an engine in the middle there somewhere, you know. But yeah, it was a very idyllic childhood.
Something occurred to me. You got this water system. That was still in effect when you bought the place, right? This water coming down.
Mm-hmm.
What happened when it froze in the winter, or didn't it ever freeze?
No, it never did. It was all underground, deep enough. No, it never froze. Not even up at the reservoir, because the reservoir is pretty big. If it froze across, that's fine. The intake was down about 4 feet in the water. And there were pictures of the people coming up there. They had pictures of that too. But yeah, there was a phrase that somebody, a lot of the children and people that lived there wrote their histories of growing up there. And they have books on them, growing up in Jonas and things like that. And the one mentions, the phrase going around a lot was from Mrs. Snyder. She kept saying, Mach schnell, hurry up, hurry up. Now that's more German than Pennsylvania German. But yeah, you can imagine, it had to be. And you had a lot of things to do there. There was a bake oven behind the hotel, which was before that hotel was built. This was there with the original hotel in New Mechanicsville, made out of stone, sort of like a walk-in fireplace with a place to put bread in. We used it, my grandmother used it to make apple butter. It was there, and finally in the 90s, the hotel people who owned it decided to move, add on the back. And this thing was in the way, this bake oven, which nobody used. And they said, geez, we're gonna get rid of it. So Linda Snyder across the street is very in tune to keeping things the way they are. Contacted Historical Society, Polk Township, and then I think they contacted somebody who looked at it and said, this is something from the early 1800s. This is historically, should preserve it. So they raised money and picked it up. This thing sitting on the ground, absolutely amazing how these, I think some movers from Mennonites, I think from Ephrata, and they came with a truck and just dug underneath it. There was no cement, just stone underneath it, and lifted this thing up, wrapped it up, and took it in a truck, went down 534. It's in the West End Fairgrounds. They put a building around it, and they have it all preserved with signs there and things, and telling you what it is. And they make bread when they're the fair.
Well, do you have any? Is there something that I should have asked you? Is there something that you were hoping to talk about today that I haven't thought to ask you about?
Just that I remember coming here when I started doing this history. I went to about Jonas Snyder. I came into this building here before this was here, and I said, "Do you have anything on Jonas Snyder?" And they had newspapers obituary, which I got his first information from here. But they said we have very little information here on the west end of Monroe County. And I think that's why I want them to know all this stuff, because that sort of brings that end of the county to this part, I think.
You know, that
especially
reminds
Jonas Snyder being a commissioner and building a courthouse, and his father being bank president.
That reminds me of a question I wanted to ask you. You're living out there as a 13-year-old kid, or how often did you go to Stroudsburg, or was Stroudsburg even the
Pretty
place
often.
you would go?
For liquor, because we had a hotel, and I go into town with my mother, and we go shopping at Wyckoff's, and that was where the Boy Scouts.
Once a week?
I was a Boy Scout, yeah, at least, or even Allentown. And in this letter that my mother wrote to my dad when they bought it, and he was in Mexico, and said, sell this place. And she says in the letter, she says, I just can't wait to go shopping, get out of this place with no electric, in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, we came over to Stroudsburg. I learned to swim here at the YMCA in the 50s. I like Stroudsburg, I still do today. Go here to Dunkelberger's.
Mm-hmm.
We were just here 2 weeks ago with my son and my grandson. That's when I walked in here, and I just said, hey, about the living history, would you like to, wouldn't mind doing it? But the other, did you do Mr. The other man I told you did before, Dr. Smith? Did you do his interview? I don't know if you did or not.
I don't remember. I've done so many of them.
But he sort of this, not with a male, but he grew up in the hotel talking about.
I think,
same
I
thing.
did talk to somebody else that was connected to the Jonas, so that
You
was
did?
in person.
Who was that? Do you remember?
Well, I think it might be who you're talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Where did he end up living after?
He lives in Allentown. He was a doctor, pediatrician, had a kid's piece.
I'll have to ask Tanya. She has a better
But
memory.
he lives in Allentown. And I visited him a couple times already.
Well, I think we've exhausted this, unless you have something else that you want to talk about. I mean, you
We're
answered my
gonna do this.
questions.
We're gonna do this again, or today.
I'm sorry?
Are we gonna do this now again?
Do what again?
The interview.
We're still doing it.
Oh, you've been recording.
We've been recording.
Oh, great! I thought you had to do it all over.
No. Do you have anything
Wonderful.
else that you want to add? Any other stories?
Yes, sir.
I'd like you to share two things.
Yes.
The story of Petey the pet parakeet. That's my favorite story.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We had a parakeet in the hotel, and my dad was, when we had the car dealership in Kutztown, the guy who bought a car from my dad, he raised parakeets. So my dad buys a parakeet, from me because he bought a car from my dad. So we had this parakeet named Petey, and outside the hotel was this courtyard, which the Snyders had before, of pine trees, big white spruce, to keep the chickens in. So the chickens are gone now. We own the hotel, and there's still a courtyard. And this pine trees are right up against the porch of the hotel. And this parakeet got out of the cage, and he jumped. My grandfather was going out the door. Parakeet got in the shoulder, and he walks out. It's like weather today, cold, and all of a sudden parakeets go. Where did parakeet go? And there he went up on top of this tree. And he's sitting up there, freezing to death. And I climbed up the tree. As a young kid, I always climbed up trees. So I got a ladder, went up, branch by branch, and there he's sitting there, and he got him, come on, I got him, held his claws, and I put him in a paper bag and carried him down. And I thought, this guy's gonna be dead. And my dad was there, and we put him in the cage, and he flops in there. And my dad, he got administered what he does for himself when he has a cold. He gets a little eyedropper of VO, whiskey.
Yeah.
Opens the bird's beak, and the bird's shaking, a couple of drops of whiskey. He got Vicks Vapor rubbed on the bird's chest, and he put him next to the radiator, put a blanket over the top, lessons gay, them alone. Next morning, there he was, sitting up, and Petey's back.
How about that?
Amazing.
The other ones, you want to talk about the oven?
Oh yeah, the bake oven or the gas grill? Well, I watched my
The
grandparents.
one that's at the fairgrounds.
Oh yeah, I did tell them that.
Oh, you did?
Bake oven, yep. Well, I watched my parents cook, and they had this gas grill. It was a pancake thing in the top. It had gas underneath and broil for steaks in the middle. And it was a Sunday morning. It was quiet, and I watched my grandmother always make. She called them hotcakes and stuff. And I made some batter. Okay, now the grill. Let's see. Shh, now the gas is coming out. Now matches. Where do I get matches? And finally, still running the gas. I go, oh, here's the match. Whoa, whoosh.
Oh, man.
It blows back. It singes my eyebrows, takes my hair off the top. The doors upstairs go flying open. They come running down. I lived. Had my pancakes. But it was just, I'm sure there's more stories, but.
Well, I enjoyed hearing the ones you told us.
Good.
So I guess we'll call it a day then. And if
Okay,
you
it's a
think
wrap.
of more stuff, let us know.
I will.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Tom.